You're listening to From the Midlands, the stories of people making a difference across the region. Our presenter is Gail Downey.
Hello, and on this episode of From the Midlands, I'm joined by Josie Morris, the Managing Director of the Staffordshire-based company Wool Call, which converts sheep's wool into packaging material for everything from food to medicines. Hello, Josie.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Explain that. How do you make that conversion and what kind of products do you package?
Okay, so essentially sheep are sheared for their wool, and there's quite a lot of wool in the world, but particularly in the UK, that is going to waste right now because there isn't really markets for it. So the wool we tend to take tends to be the wool that usually goes to waste. It isn't very good for a jumper. We convert it into wool call liners, which are essentially insulation that goes in our boxes, and those boxes are used for the shipment of anything that needs to be kept within temperature. So the best examples are meat boxes, cheeses, dairy, and all the way through to pharmaceutical products such as vaccines and Botox.
And this was your mother's idea. Tell me how she came upon it.
My mum is a packaging consultant and has been since her 20s. I'm sure she won't appreciate me telling you how old she is now. But yeah, so since her early 20s, she's had her own packaging consultancy. So she'd be designing packaging for an array of different companies. One of her clients was the National Trust. And I didn't know this until I found out about this. Essentially, the National Trust have a massive group of farmers because they have so much land. So they look after loads of different farmers on all of their stately homelands and all of that. And they were trying to come up with a way for their farmers to send their produce in the post, just after foot and mouth. So they were trying to generate more value for their farms. So to find a way for them to send their produce in the post out to the consumer, direct, get a bit of money, get a bit of cash going into the farms without using polystyrene boxes. So Angie, being a creator that she is, researched, designed and developed Wool Call, looking at wool as the insulator rather than polystyrene, and ended up selling 5,000 into the National Trust, and then the rest, as they say, is history.
And tell me how it works. How does sheep's wool keep things cool or warm or whatever it needs to do?
So I always say that you never see a cold sheep. So if you're driving along the motorway and you see a sheep, you'll see them. They don't often look that cold, and that's because the material on them, the wool, has been developed over thousands of years. I won't give you sheep facts because I ruin birthday parties and all sorts with these sheep facts. But yeah, so the wool actually acts as an insulator. So if you think about, say, a woolly jumper keeps you warm, it will also keep things cold because it regulates temperature. So on a sheep, as I say, it's been developed over thousands of years to be an insulator by nature. And so within the box, it's the fibres and the way they're structured that then creates basically trapping the air that's coming through the hot into the cold box. So it's really effective and something that I say is one of the best inventions of nature, because it does the job that not many man-made materials can do.
And it seems such a simple idea. Did anyone use it, back in the day in medieval times?
I heard something or read something that said that wool was actually Great Britain was built on wool. Wool was a massive trade in the UK back when hundreds of years ago. So all of the army uniform would be made from wool. People's rugs would be made, people's carpets, people's clothing. So there's a massive industry in wool. What we do know is this is since we've created Wool Call, and I've done some research. There was some evidence of oranges from Spain being shipped in crates with wool around them, and I think that's to do with that wool absorb moisture as well. So I think it's to do with moisture content and keeping moisture content away from the fruits. So it's quite an interesting one that when you look back, wool has been used for so many things, and it's absolutely crazy now that it's not really used for those many things now. And the main thing is really because plastic's taken over. So 50 to 60 years ago, material science switched to plastics, and so any of those great natural materials that were being used have been so we've lost 50 to 60 years worth of research into those materials. So we hope that we're starting to kind of reinvigorate that with wool.
And do you think that wool will become more popular given that we're all trying to use a lot less plastic now?
Yeah, I hope so. It's got its applications. I mean, I'm a big believer. We have a mantra here that's right material, right application. So there are places plastic can be used and should be used. There are places that cardboard's good. There's places that glass is good. But I believe that there is definitely a place for wool. And I think the great thing about wool is the longevity it gives. That classic woolly jumper that grandma's knitted, it's something that lasts a long time. It's quite relatively easy. It's kind of self-cleaning in a way, and it's something something that's readily available. So I think the limiting factor with wool currently is quite expensive. So when it comes to buying a woolly jumper, everyone knows it's a bit more expensive than a polyester one. So everything has its place, but I think for me it's about moderation.
You said you didn't want to give us some sheep facts, but go on.
The first domesticated sheep, there is evidence of it from 9000 BC. So for all those that are still awake, that's a sheep fact I'll give you. And there's 30 million sheep in the UK, I believe, around that. And I think 9 million of those are in Wales. And there's roughly 5 to 7 million in the US. So you can see how many sheep we have in the UK.
Great, okay. That'd be really good for someone's trivia quiz, won't it?
You can cut that one out later as well.
You are actually a family business, as you say. Your mum, Angela, CEO, founded the company. Her husband, Keith, works for the business as well. And your sister is finance director.
Yeah.
Is it all business and shop talk at Sunday lunch and Christmas dinner?
We try not to make it the case, but it does come up. I think particularly a few years ago, it was definitely something that was mentioned a lot. We've tried to put boundaries in that at times we don't talk about it. So I try now, if I go out for, say, a cup of tea with mum, I will try not to talk about work. But if I'm with her, if I say I want to talk about work, she'll talk about it. But generally we try and put boundaries in. But certainly it comes up. And especially for partners, I think it can be quite boring sometimes, if I'm honest. They go out the room.
With any family, of course, there are always kind of disagreements. So how does that work when you are family members and you run a business together?
I've been pretty lucky in that me and my sister have a really good relationship, and I think we're yin and yang. I always say that Jess is the brains of the business, and that I don't really know what I do in the business really, but no, jokes aside, I think we work really well together. So she's more finance and she's more spreadsheet and she's more kind of planning, and I'm more kind of off the cuff, and I'm probably more marketing and sales. So between us, I think if we each wanted each other's job, that would obviously cause maybe some friction, but generally, and because we've been brought up in a similar way, we have similar values, so we don't tend to argue really about anything. I don't think I can ever think of a time we've disagreed. There have been times where we've had different opinions in the sense of, how to get to a point, but we always end up getting to the same point. So that's been good. The difficulty, obviously, when you're working with a parent is making sure that you've got the boundaries between when you're a daughter and when you're talking to an MD. So recently I've actually been saying, this is me as an MD, this is me as your daughter. So you kind of try and split them out. It can be difficult at times, but I think over the last few years I've put stuff in place to split those out as best as I can.
You talk about your role with marketing and branding and so on. Your branding is quite distinctive with the font that you use for Wool Cool. Just explain the thinking behind that, because it looks like wool. It looks like writing in wool, doesn't it?
Yeah, so we have a really great brand partner that's local to us, that's worked with us for many years now, so they really know us as a company. And we really wanted to create a brand that would last. And we wanted a brand, particularly a few years ago when we were a bit smaller, that got out there and showed the kind of the power of what we were trying to create. And in some ways, it showed us as bigger than we were then. And I think brand's really important in that sense. And our brand actually, if you look at it, if you go on our website, there's it's kind of got a line drawing, and the little loop that's in the W of the wool cool is actually what's called a right-hand helix, which is the core of a wool fibre, and it's what makes the wool fibre springy. So if you Google wool fibre and you see our logo, you would be able to then see how they match.
It's interesting because you don't want to come across as a small cottage industry business, but your branding has to reflect what you do, doesn't it?
Yeah, and there's a lot of debate early on about whether we have a sheep on our website or not. So we're like, do we have green fields with sheep on our website or not? And I think we decided that we want to have a nod to nature because that's where it's come from. It's come from a sheep. We're not going to hide from that. But what we didn't want is a perception of, it's dirty, it's from a farm, it's a natural material, it's from an animal. All those things that can sometimes have a negative connotation in people's minds to being like muddy and dirty. And then all the way through to the fact that we wanted to have something that was quite scientific. So it's this balance between a nod to the nature, an appreciation of the nature as well, because I think we should all appreciate nature and what it gives us, but also that kind of scientific element that we say kind of created by nature, driven by science, because it's a really scientific and it's a really complex fibre, really. So it's really interesting when you look into it.
There's a phrase that I'll have to get you to explain. Let me just check on my notes now, because you're doing some work with Cambridge University, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, we've done some work in the past with them, and we did some work on what's called PCMs.
Phase change material.
Yeah, phase change material too. I thought you might be asking me about that. So phase change material is basically a material that changes state. So if you look at, say, the best one's water. So water changes state at a certain temperature. So at 0 it freezes, and at 100 it turns into a gas. And really there's so many materials around us. So candle wax is a great example, where it melts and it solidifies at certain temperatures, and that's what a phase change material is. It's a material that changes state based on temperature, and there are actually quite a lot of them around. If you then think about what's around you, quite a lot of them are used actually in heating as well in certain buildings. Again, it's a fascinating topic when you delve into it. Not something I bring up at dinner parties, but something that definitely is quite a you start to realise the applications around real world, and it's really interesting.
So you've had a lot of environmental awards. You've won a lot of environmental awards, and you've also won quite a lot of business awards. I understand you're now exporting internationally.
Yeah, that's true. So we won 2 Queen's Awards, which has been an honour, and the most recent one we obtained was this year for sustainable development. That's one of the ones we were most proud about, not only because it's kind of obviously very relevant for what's happened recently, and something we're really honoured about. It's quite a rigorous process to go through, and it's something that shows what we're trying to do, which is create a business that has a sustainable future, and making sure that not just our product's sustainable, but every practice we're conducting with as a business is sustainable, and measuring our impact. One of the things that we have also been looking at is getting Wool Call out there into the rest of the world. And so recently we've exported to the US, we've exported into Europe, we've got potentially a customer now in South Africa, which is really exciting. So we're starting to get out there, and we've had quite a lot of interest from places like Dubai and South Korea. So it's slowly coming together from an export point of view, but it is a place where we would really like to start to expand into further.
And how many sheep do they have in the States?
5 to 7 million. Yeah.
I knew that you would know the answer to that. Yeah. So I was interested to see on your website that you encourage customers to show you how they reuse the packaging, because there are a lot of complaints, aren't there, that whenever, I won't name names, but certain delivery companies deliver a very small item in a great big package, but you encourage people who you have your products to actually reuse the wool.
Yeah, so we're trying to really reinvigorate or reinvent packaging. We like to say we're some of the founders of the sustainable packaging revolution, and some of it is around looking at packaging a bit differently. So yes, it would be good if you can dispose of packaging quite easily, and you can with the wool being compostable, and usually we use cardboard box that can go in your cardboard box recycling. But what we're trying to say is, well, you're receiving something in the post, well, do something else with it. What's been really fantastic over the whole time we've been at Wool Call is the feedback we get from customers. So we get customers who are using it in the garden, we get customers who are using it in their house, we get customers who make pet bedding out of it, who's donated to animal shelters. We had one lady who'd made a craft project for her daughter for the school. So there's loads of things you can do with this material, cushions, all sorts. It seems crazy that we have a waste mentality, let's just chuck that in the bin. But actually, let's do something with it. And actually, if it does end up in the bin, it's compostable, it's a natural material, so there's no harm there. But it's just about trying to get people to rethink packaging. And maybe now is a good time to mention the offshoot that we have. So off the back of that, we have had a lot of customers come back to us and say that they've received our boxes in the post from whoever they bought food from, and they've reused the packaging in their garden to the extent where they've wanted to buy more packaging from us. So we've launched a brand called Horti Wool, which is using wool but in the garden, following that kind of accidental market research. So we've launched that in December last year, and we're already into quite a few of the garden centres across the country, and hoping for spring to summer we'll be in a number more with our new basket liner set. So it's really exciting, and a new project to get our teeth into.
And the future of Wool Call, and then the future of Josie Morris.
Yeah. For me, What is that? Are you asking what my future is? Oh wow, okay. So I think probably the future for Woolcool Packaging, or Woolcool as a company actually, is to continue, banging the drum of sustainable packaging. I would love to see sustainable growth as a company. I don't think it needs to be growth at all costs. There's the pharmaceutical sector, which we are very much in now, but would love to grow into that. One of the areas that I see that we would really like to make a difference in is the shipment of vaccines. At the moment, a lot of vaccines are shipped in polystyrene boxes to be kept between 2 and 8. I'm sure everyone's aware of the COVID vaccine and the challenge shipping it. So many of those vaccines are shipped using, say, a less sustainable material. So we're really driving at the moment, we're about to launch a product that's going into that market and really could really make a big difference in terms of waste and the amount of polystyrene that's going to landfill. If it switched to Woolcool, then we would save quite a lot of that kind of material ending up in landfill for thousands of years. So that's
you do have, sorry to interrupt you, you do have a fact on your website, don't you, about Olympic sized swimming pools and polystyrene?
Yeah, so we worked out that with the amount of wool we'd use, it was the equivalent of 75 Olympic sized swimming pools of polystyrene saved for where people have chosen to go with the Woolcool rather than the polystyrene boxes. Now, if we imagine how many vaccinations are sent out across the world every day and how many Olympic-sized swimming pools of poly boxes are currently being used to ship vaccinations, I think it's a massive thing that we can make a difference on. And some of the results we're getting with our new box, this is exclusive, are fantastic. So I'm really excited to get stuck into that in 2023.
Okay, and I interrupted you. You were telling me the future for Woolcool.
So yeah, that's the future really. So the future for Woolcool is probably still driving the food side of things, but also going into the pharmaceutical. The future for me is to continue doing what I'm doing, and hopefully there's a few other ideas we want to launch, a few others diversifications like Hortiwool that we want to bring into the business. But unfortunately I only have 24 hours in the day, so if anyone has any suggestions of how I can get a few more hours, that would be fantastic. You don't know where life takes you, but it's been a really exciting journey so far, and something that I don't think I would ever have imagined that I would have gone on without being in this role. So we'll see what it holds.
Josie Morris from Woolcool, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
You've been listening to From the Midlands, a Whirlwind production. If you've enjoyed listening and would like to sponsor this series of podcasts, details are available on our website at fromthemidlands.co.uk.